You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Spotify. Why you failed. People are well aware of the fact that Spotify said adios to Harry's wife, being axed back in June. This, of course, caused her a number of problems. The act of dismissing her, or not renewing the contract, or ending the contract, wounded her. It threatened her sense of control, and it provided her with new fuel. It also meant that she wasn't getting the amount of money that she thought she was. Thus it affected a residual benefit. Furthermore, and perhaps most importantly of all, it was reported on worldwide, with much entertainment taken from the fact of the Spotify executive referring to Harry and Harry's wife as fucking grifters. The circumstances of the cessation, its reporting thereafter, and the fact that it was commented upon multiple times across social media and the comment forums of mainstream media and below the line, posed repeated threats to control for Harry's wife, as the humiliation of the axing of the podcast echoed across the world. Why did it end? Well, it's fairly simple, really. As the executive identified, a pair of them are grifters. Namely, she's lazy, wants to be paid just for turning up, doesn't want to put any work in, and is devoid of talent or industry. That's why it failed. But now there would appear to be more information coming forward with regards to why that failure came about. And this demonstrates another problem that exists for Harry's wife. Because she's widely disliked, both amongst people and in certain sections of the media, not only is there a crowd that's there waiting to capture her failings, knowing that they will come, knowing that she's on the downward spiral, but furthermore, they're perfectly content to resurrect past failings and revisit them, as is the case here. For other people, it would be a case of, let bygones be bygones. It's in the past, nobody's really interested anymore. But with Harry's wife, there's almost a degree of glee at her misfortune and the opportunity to stick the boot in once again, which is indicative of how disliked she is, of course, all generated by her own behaviour. On this occasion, it's the Mail which tells us Spotify boss suggests Harry and Harry's wife's £18 million podcast deal did not work because it failed to make consumers happy. No shit, Sherlock. The chief executive of Spotify has suggested that Harry and Harry's wife's £18 million podcast deal collapsed because it failed to make consumers happy after the Sussexes made just 12 podcasts in 2.5 years. Now, it behooves me to say to Mr. Chief Executive, if you'd only look in this direction to see that in a similar period of time, your glorious narrator has created 5,900 videos. You want erudite education and entertainment, Daniel Ek, then look no further than the Ultra. Now, Daniel Ek, who was making a rare media appearance almost 4 months after it was announced that the Archetypes podcast would not be renewed for a second season, admitted that some of Spotify's innovative ideas have not gone to plan. Harry's wife's multi-million-pound Spotify deal was axed in June following a mutual, supposedly, decision between the streaming giant and Archwell Audio, the Duchess and Prince Harry's company. Sources close to the multi-million-pound deal, which was signed by the couple in 2020, said it was dropped after the pair did not produce enough content to warrant the full payout. Why is that? Well, Harry really wasn't interested in the project to begin with. It was her baby. He made 1, possibly 2 appearances, sort of popping into the studio. But beyond that, It was all about her, as she wanted it to be. But she is hampered by two distinct problems. One, she's boring. Two, she's lazy. If she was boring but hard-working, she would put her mind to finding out something that would be interesting and most likely leverage off other people's ideas. I can't think of something, but let me surround myself with people who are great with ideas, who are inspirational. And I'll work hard to get those people in. I'll work hard by dealing with those individuals to pull the content from them, and I then can claim it as my own. Alternatively, if she was talented but not particularly industrious, then she could come up with fantastic ideas and then delegate them to people. What we're going to do is we're going to interview this person and ask them about this. We're going to present a show about this particular idea. You don't necessarily need to have two. Of course, it's a serious advantage where you're talented and industrious. Just look at me. But one will invariably suffice. Harry's wife has neither, with the consequence that she didn't produce enough content. Shedding new light on the decision not to renew Harry and Harry's wife's deal, Spotify boss Eck told the BBC, "We thought new innovation was needed to happen here. We thought we can come in and offer a great experience that both makes consumers very happy and allows new creators new avenues." He added, "And the truth of the matter is some of it has worked, some of it hasn't. We're learning from those and we're moving on, and we wish all of the ones we didn't renew with the best of success they can have moving forward." Eck was speaking to the BBC's Zoe Kleinman, who had questioned him on whether 12 podcasts across 2.5 years from the Sussexes was worth £18 million. She said his response had been very diplomatic. Harry's wife's podcast was one of the most high-profile casualties at the time. On a conference call with financial analysts earlier this year, Eck conceded mistakes were made during a spree of more than $1 billion as Spotify attempted to establish itself as the top competitor in the industry. And of course, the Mail isn't going to miss the opportunity to tell us, after it was revealed that Harry and Harry's wife's podcast would not be renewed, Spotify executive Bill Simmons described the couple as fucking grifters, an Americanism for swindlers. Simmons, head of podcast innovation and monetization at Spotify, condemned the pair in an episode of his own podcast. "The fucking grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them," he said. And of course, the Mail does not hesitate to bring this matter up once again. The article then goes on to talk about the failure to renew the patent and the podcast not being renewed in order to throw further salt in the wound in relation to Harry's wife. Further condemnation, albeit diplomatic and somewhat mild, that has originated from the Spotify chief executive in order to demonstrate why Harry's wife's work was not continued because it didn't make consumers happy. And that's testament to the fact that, unlike some narcissists who are entertaining, charismatic, fascinating to talk with, she has nothing of merit to say, nothing of interest to say, and is, of course, lazy. Let's dive below the line briefly to see if people share the sentiments of this chief executive, to ascertain if they form the same view in relation to him. Dorothy writes, "Maybe because she's unlikable and a hypocrite with no talent." Sweet Pea weighs in, and with a horrible grating syrupy voice. Quiz 11, "There was nothing interesting about it." Yvonne 333 agrees. "Exactly. They exhausted all there was to say about the royal family. The rest of their lives were uninteresting and boring." Say it as it is. Everything they do makes others unhappy. Another South Park episode is needed. Zebra, "It didn't work because it was a complete snooze fest. Harry's wife is unbelievably boring." Nitty Gritty, "She loves the sound of her voice, talks a lot but actually says nothing." Magic Mama, "It was absolute rubbish." Dar 88, "They wanted the most money for the least amount of work." Steve, "Who wants to listen to multimillionaires complaining about their lives?" Jerry Pozar, "Because they were rubbish, like everything that that woman does. Stephen with a PH, you forgot to add that it was a gigantic snooze fest. Boring, boring, boring. Talentless, and also she's not likeable. Scottish wife. All Harry's wife did was talk about herself. She talked over her guests and didn't really allow them to answer the questions, as she kept interrupting them with more of herself. Stop the Wokes. It depressed people beyond belief. Bill 2112, the cynical majority saw through their agenda and didn't bother to listen. Simple. Palindrome 4, it fails for health reasons. People are sick and tired of them. Truth Not Treason, like Invictus was meant to be about heroic veterans. Did you see any of them? No, it was all about Harry's wife. John Doe, they didn't make consumers happy. Gee, what a shock. DI2, it wasn't satisfying consumers, you don't say. Millions of people could have told you it wouldn't work, but hey-ho, someone went gung-ho. They were well and truly Markled. Vincent, companies have realised that the Markles are bone idle. Their one trick has been played so often that the pony is on its way to the glue factory. I doubt Netflix is going to continue to try and squeeze anything out of their unfortunate investment. Segi1958, what would this pair know about making other people happy? Notice that in the comments there are 3 prevailing points. She's lazy, she's boring and talent-free, and that her behaviour has made her unlikable, which has meant that people aren't interested. These are all collateral consequences of her narcissism that got her in a position to get these deals early, and she couldn't deliver. Because her sense of entitlement is so great, she just thinks that everybody should like what she does because it's her. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.